video games. They're amazing, aren't they? They can take you on an epic journey, satisfy your competitive cravings, simulate real life, be educational, be a platform to hang out with your friends, and so much more. Add to that the ability to update, change, and fix a game via the internet, and they're an entirely unique medium. A game can literally change completely from one day to the next. There's nothing else like them. However, I believe that we're slowly being sucked in by the majesty of today's games, blinded to what they truly are. Let's not forget, video games are first and foremost consumer products. Yes, there's the games as a service bullshit, but at their core, video games, as I say, are a consumer product, and therefore should be treated as such. The problem is, in a lot of instances, they're not, and there's no better example of this than early access games. Now, on the face of it, early access games can be a good idea. They allow consumers to buy and play a game before it's finished, whilst the developer finishes the game. This can help develop a community around the title and crucially create revenue to help pay for development costs. This then helps to allow indie games to be brought to market, thus diversifying gaming as a whole and bringing fresh new gaming ideas to life. You only have to look at the very first early access game, which I was surprised is Minecraft, which apparently released a purchasable early simplified build, to see the potential in early access releases. Look at Minecraft now. For consumers, you often paid a lowered price for this early access build and received the full game when it was finished. Win-win, right? Sometimes. Of course, there are some shining examples of this working. I already mentioned Minecraft, but to add to the list we could put Valheim, Rust, Subnautica, Don't Starve, The Long Dark, Kerbal Space Program. There's loads that have worked out. But there's even more that haven't. So what makes early access games bad? Well, buying an early access game comes with absolutely no guarantees. It's not a binding contract. Crucially, this means there's nothing saying a developer has to pay customers back if they don't finish the game. And unsurprisingly, a lot of early access games don't get anywhere near completion before they're abandoned by the developer. This leaves us, the consumers, out of pocket. Take a look at Infestation Survivor Stories, previously known as the War Z, or Starforge, to see these exact practices happening. Essentially, they're scams. This lack of guarantees leads to a whole host of other issues as well. The developers can start developing an entirely new game with the money generated from the initial title. Have a look at Ark Survival Evolved developers Studio Wildcard, who released Atlas before Ark was even finished. Not to mention the abundance of early access games that all of a sudden release paid DLC before finishing the core game. V Rising, a relatively new game, is a shining example of that. This leads to what I call marketing manipulation, not to be confused with market manipulation, which I'm too lazy to look up the definition of. It's marketing manipulation. Feel free to use this in your social circles to make you sound smart. Marketing manipulation is where early access games will show content and features in their trailers, images, blogs, whatever, and then those never make it into the game. They are enticing you to buy early, fill their pockets, and then they don't do any work. It's a scam. Now, most gamers already know these things, and the decision to buy an early access game is completely up to the individual. None of this explains how early access games are brainwashing gamers. So, stick with me. Let me explain. What I've noticed recently is gamers are starting to accept games being released in unfinished, buggy, unoptimized, and sometimes unplayable states with the understanding that they'll get fixed in the future. And this is no longer reserved to early access games, oh no! We're starting to see it in fully fledged AAA, full-priced titles. All of these games released in terrible states and were fixed over time, exactly like an early access game would do. The key difference is they aren't advertised as early access games. The number of times I've seen comments saying, Battlefield 2042 is good now, or Cyberpunk 2077 is finally the game it was meant to be. We're slowly becoming accustomed to this practice when it shouldn't be allowed. It's unacceptable. Now, a lot of these games are something called live service games, in which the game is supposed to evolve, improve, and add additional content over time. But all that's happening is they spend the first year, or even sometimes the first 2 years, getting the product to what it should have been at release. After a year of ownership, you're not getting an extra year's worth of additional content as promised, you're getting the game you were supposed to get when you initially purchased it. And it's not getting any better. It seems to be happening more and more as the backlash doesn't have enough of an impact. If it did, we wouldn't be seeing things like this. Warhammer 40k Darktide, a game that released a couple of months ago, November 2022. Released with a fully fledged in-game store to buy items with real money, but a core feature of the game, crafting, wasn't available at release. Fuck that bollocks. We're slowly beginning to accept these sorts of practices. And to add to the dismay, we're now paying more for games than ever before and receiving even less. Now, I'm not trying to act all high and mighty and tell you not to purchase things that you want. I've purchased hundreds of early access games. I brought the World Z, for Christ's sake. I'm merely illustrating the point that we as consumers can't keep allowing this. So, what can we do? Well, it puts us gamers in a tricky position. As usual, we can't do much. Do I think developers should stop developing the game if it releases in a shitty state? No, I don't. They should clean up their trash and give the people what they promised. Preferably on the fucking release date, though. I guess the only thing we can do is be aware of these practices and not be accepting of them where possible. Ideally, online gaming stores will revisit their refunding policies, not only for early access games, but for AAA titles as well, so we can refund what I consider are gaming scams. This in turn will hopefully impact the developers and allow us to get our money back, eventually wiping out these shitty practices. All I can say is try not to pre-order games, look at reviews from a trusted reviewer. I recommend Skill Up on YouTube, and just try and use your best judgment. The only way we're going to stop this is if we affect them financially. I'll leave you with this. Would you buy a car if the dealer said we'll give you the wheels in about a month? Or even worse, would you accept buying a car that was supposed to come with wheels and doesn't, when the dealer says, oh, we'll fix that in a few months' time? I know I wouldn't. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Leave me to me scathing.